at 9:30 sharp. Alex Curry, Happy New Year's. She's in for Jenny Tapp. Alex, what are you and the guys talking about today?
Happy New Year, Jenna. And coming up on Undisputed, is James Harden the best player in the NBA right now? And should the Steelers try to trade Antonio Brown? Rob Parker and Chris Broussard join me on Undisputed. Coming up next. Jenna, back to you.
All right, Alex, thanks. We look forward to it. Time for us to go viral. Check this out from last night. A young Warriors fan in awe watching Steph Curry warm up.
That's the beauty of being an athlete, man. Stuff like that. Your impact on kids is priceless. I never had anybody look at me like that, not even my wife.
That is so cool. Well, this kid, and that's one of the coolest things about going to NBA games as opposed to any other sport, because you are so close. That kid, his parents got him some pretty nice tickets for the holidays, that's really cool. The Warriors, by the way, dominated the Suns yesterday the way they were supposed to. It was a little close early. The Suns had beaten them not that long ago. It's a good win for the Warriors.
Did you either of you had a situation where maybe you got real close to an athlete growing up that stuck with you?
No, I was poor.
Awesome. Well, this conversation definitely did not go the way I thought it was going to go.
Jenna was trying to tell a Danny Ainge story, but we didn't open the door for it. So let's just talk about the NFL.
100% what I was trying to do, by the way.
Yep.
But I'm going to move past
Close
it.
that door, and now we're talking Antonio Brown.
To the NFL now. An always dramatic Steelers locker room took an even more dramatic turn. Wasn't that funny? According to multiple reports, Antonio Brown got into a heated argument with Ben Roethlisberger earlier this week. Brown reportedly threw a ball at Big Ben, walked off, skipped multiple practices, and did not return all week. He did show up to Heinz Field on Sunday, however, expecting to play, and was told he would not be playing. So he reportedly left at halftime in frustration. All right, Nick, what is your reaction to the latest drama in Pittsburgh?
This is not typical Steelers drama. This is a big deal now. Like, I don't really care if he threw the ball at Big Ben. I would imagine since the first time he's done that. Big Ben can be, at times, unlikable, and Antonio can be a hothead. Like, that, I think, is typical football drama. But not showing up to practices after that, in what was a playoff week for the Steelers, last week was their playoff game. Now, winning didn't mean they advanced, but losing meant their season was over. And it's the idea that, oh, well, don't show up and it's going to be fine. They damn near lost that game. They needed a couple field goals by a rookie replacement kicker just to escape with a win. He put his head coach, Antonio did, in such an impossible position where Tomlin had to make the choice. Do I allow this behavior and give my team the best chance to win, but set an untenable precedent that in week 17, you can no-show and still get to play? Or do I do what I have to do, which is bench the most talented guy on the team for our biggest game of the year and maybe cost these other 52 guys a chance for the playoffs? Like, they were this close to getting in because they did win that game. And Baker Mayfield was 5 yards away from field goal range for the Cleveland Browns. Like, what Antonio did and the judgment he has shown, there's a lot of player behavior I can excuse, Bart, but the Facebook Live video was bad because it's just by the grace of God, Mike Tomlin didn't say something in that locker room.
About the commissioner or anybody. About
the commissioner, about the upcoming opponent, using language Tomlin wouldn't want to be used outwardly that he could maybe use. There's a million things that could happen when he wasn't recording that, he was broadcasting that. And then this offseason, allegedly throwing furniture off a balcony 14 stories up to where it almost hits and potentially kills a small child. He no-showed for a team meeting after the Chiefs lost because he was angry about his involvement. And now this. Antonio Brown, as great as he is, has shown a pattern of behavior that is just unacceptable. And I'm not a scold, but it's even by my standards, and they're pretty lax standards, unacceptable for any player, much less one of the best players we have in this league.
Whatever you are, money makes you more of it. And, he exhibited his behavior far before they gave him the money, but the talent just, forced their hands. And you have to be, careful who you lay in bed with. And, long term, first, they had to deal with Santonio Holmes, let him go, let Plexico Burress go. I remember talking to Cowens, and he said that they used to have guys that they knew were 1 contract guys and 2 contract guys. Obviously, they were sold that Antonio Brown, because of his work ethic, the chip on his shoulder, which he plays with, was worth that second contract. contract.
And now he's on his third contract with them.
Right, and he's proven that to be wrong because he's setting a bad culture. You know, and where's management? What do you do moving forward? Because now you just gave him an extension, and how you can't move him. And now that all this bad press, they could have controlled the narrative. If he wanted to act like that, you know, privately, they should have embarrassed him publicly. They shouldn't have made up an excuse saying it was about his knee. They should have made him dress, and then I wouldn't have played him. And when he walked off, you know, they're going to have to relook at this contract and see if it's any way they can get some of this money back and you can void it, much like they're trying to do with Leonard Fournette for conduct detrimental to the team.
What are the Steelers' options at this point? Do you hold on to him, or can you financially is it feasible to let him go?
He signed a contract extension, his third contract with the team, February of 2017. So I guess February of now 2 years ago, technically. But just, you know, around right before the previous season or right after the 2 seasons ago ended. They restructured it 1 year in. And because they did that, if they move on from him, at some point, they're going to have $21+ million of dead money. Now, they can split that up over 2 years, so it's $9 million in 2019 and $12 million in 2020. But either way, you got to pay that bill. Very hard to move Antonio Brown. But I don't know what you do. Because what we do know is the Steelers systemically this season failed. The management failed by losing the staring contest with Antonio Brown. Mike Tomlin, as good as a coach as he's been.
Le'Veon Bell.
Who did I say? I apologize. For failing the staring contest with Le'Veon Bell, pardon me. Mike Tomlin failed as far as not keeping this team on the right track after 7-2-1. Big Ben failed in ways as far as with his public comments, and he's going to make some more today on that radio show. His public comments about teammates and his failures in the red zone with the turnovers. And Antonio Brown failed with repeatedly what I would call insubordination. That's how you go from 7-2-1 down to the playoffs. Only 3 teams have ever had 7 wins through 10 weeks and not made the playoffs. The other 2, both of their quarterbacks suffered season-ending injuries, the 95 Bears and the 93 Dolphins. The Steelers have no such excuse. And so the problem is everyone should be held accountable, but how can you? There's nothing to do to Big Ben. Right. Mike Tomlin has earned at least a 1 year grace period. Antonio's contract makes him almost untradeable. So Le'Veon's leaving anyway. So what do you do moving forward? I don't know that they have a path out of this.
It is a bad situation for the Steelers right now. All right, let's move on to the Eagles and the most popular backup quarterback in the league, Nick Foles. Foles did win their last 3 games. He did get them into the playoffs. And while Carson Wentz still hasn't been ruled out for the postseason, some are wondering if Philly should stick with Nick. Doug Peterson was asked about this yesterday. Bart, should the Eagles stick with Foles or switch back to Wentz as soon as he is actually medically cleared to play?
Well, I think you got to stick with what's working, right? And right now, the offense is moving, the defense, everybody's playing. They're playing complementary football. And I think what Nick Foles provides for them is rhythm passing. I think their offense has identity. I think they created more balance with Nick. I think they were trying to do too much and put the game in Carson Wentz's hands. And the personnel that they have just aren't willing to do that. They don't have Jay Ajayi, so they can't get those tough in-between yards. But with the RPOs and what Nick brings to this team, and I don't understand why they can't duplicate this same type of philosophy behind Carson Wentz, but everybody seems to play a little bit better when Nick Foles is behind center. And I think the explosive plays come to life. It's not just Ertz, it's Jeffries, it's Aguilar down the field. And I think they're a better team and a better unit with Nick Foles behind.
And listen, we don't know how they would have played in the playoffs last year with Carson Wentz. Maybe they'd have won the Super Bowls anyway. We don't know how they would have played in this 3-game stretch with Carson Wentz. Maybe what they needed was not the Wentz injury, but to be in elimination games as they were the last 3 weeks.
So it was just total coincidence that Nick came in when they needed him.
I'm not saying it is. I'm saying we can't prove it wasn't.
Okay.
We don't know that the secondary wouldn't have still played better as they are the pass rush. What I do know is this. This is not a decision. They have made the decision that Foles is playing this week. So one of 2 things are going to happen this week. They're going to lose and their season's over, and all this, St. Nick's shine goes away to a degree and sanity regains and Carson Wentz becomes your starter moving forward in the next season. Or they win, and if they win, it would be insane to move on from Foles. He would have then won 4 straight elimination games this year to go along with 3 last year. He would have just gone on the road against the best defense in the NFL in the Chicago Bears and won a playoff game. Of course you stick with Nick Foles. The worst thing that could happen to Carson Wentz is they win this week and they say, Carson, you get your job back. Go to New Orleans and beat Drew Brees. Because this this magical ride is going to end. It's either going to end this week against the Bears or the following week against the Saints.
Everyone thought that last year.
But last year they were at home. They were playing the Falcons and then they were playing the Vikings. It was a different situation. Now, if it doesn't end, then there's still no decision. If they get back to the Super Bowl, then Carson Wentz is going to be available on the trade market. If they don't get back to the Super Bowl, then Nick Foles is going to be available as a free agent. But the remainder of this season, he's the only quarterback taking snaps barring injury.
And it's important to note they can't keep both. It's not financially feasibly. They can't keep Nick Foles, right?
No.
$20 million against the cap next year.
They could. It depends on what Nick Foles do. Nick Foles has left the team before. He understands that, the grass ain't always greener on the other side. Carson Wentz doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah.
He's been hurt. You're going to need a backup quarterback.
But they wouldn't do that to Carson. It would be $20 million, and you would have the fans begging for Foles.